Right. Well, we are in the middle of, we're at the beginning of a new series. And we'll find it. It's going to be about 5 weeks, all right? And so here's the thing. Anytime you talk about money, it gets a little tense, all right? And so here's my thing. Whenever we talk about money, my fear is that like someone decided to come today and they just gave it their last ditch effort. They're like, I'm going to try church one more time. You know, I'm going to go back one more time, and then it's like the time that we're talking about giving. You know, because that's what everyone's like, all the church want. All they want is your money. And or maybe you've been begging a friend to come. You know, and you're like, you've been inviting them, and they're like, finally, they're like, you know what, I'm going to see you this Sunday. You know, and it's like, what are you going to do? Because the Bible talks a lot about personal finance. And the reason I think that it's maybe one of the most personal topics, and I don't think it's, apart from doing a series on like sexual ethics, you know, money is probably the one that really kind of ticks the nerve a little bit and gets you a little uncomfortable. And it shouldn't really surprise us, because money is the, as far as divorces go, it's one of the top reasons for marriage fights and divorce is money fights and money problems, right? And so if we can't even, if it's a stressor within our own home, then of course, I don't want one more person telling me what to do with the money that I earned, right? It's like, let me handle me, and you talk about Jesus, and then we'll just move on from this, right? That's kind of what we want. And so here's my little disclaimer if you're a guest. For the next 5 weeks, all right, all I ask is that you engage the material. Because listen, whether you're a believer in Jesus or not, the Bible is full of financial content that works regardless of where you are on your faith journey. Don't feel obligated to even join in on Stewardship Sunday if you're a guest. This is a time of year that we as a congregation take to align and focus our finances, to figure out how we can best align our personal budgets with the mission and vision of this church, because it's a church that we believe has its heart set on Lakewood community and is and wants to impact it for God's glory, right? So that's why we do this. And so if you're a guest, that's all I'm saying is just engage the material. Don't feel like you have to participate in the whole collective body as we move into this kind of this next season, okay? So what is it about money that causes issues in our lives? And I think part of it is we don't think about it very often, or at least we don't think about it in its wider kind of scope. Like, what is money? What is finance? What is, budgets? You can't, we're going to talk about all those things. We're going to talk, because listen, budget isn't a curse word, and even if you don't think you have one, like you have one. It's just money in, money out, right? That's all that is. So if it's not written down, it's probably not balanced. You know what I mean? But it's a budget. You have something coming in every month, and you have something coming out every month. And so you have a budget, and so we're going to talk about that probably in week 3, I think. And then, like, what does it mean to be a good steward? That we've been entrusted with things in this life, time, talents, treasures. We've been entrusted with things, and we've been called to use those things for the glory of God. And so what does it mean, and what does it look like to be a good steward? We're going to talk about that. Generosity. What does it mean to be generous when we serve a God who gave his son, who came to earth and died, right? That's a generous God. And so how do we mimic his generosity? So the story we're going to be in today is in Luke chapter 12. If you have your Bibles, we're going to start in verse 13. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." All right, so real quick, the inheritance was the firstborn got the lion's share of the inheritance. And the reason for that was if you're going to have a bunch of kids and you split your nest egg between all of them, like it would diminish the amount. And so the idea was if we gave most of our retirement or what we have to one child, then they maintain a large portion, right? And so the family name stays strong. And so it was really about maintaining just one person to keep all of the money and all the property and all of that together, and then he would kind of take care of the siblings. And so Jesus is, so this guy's asking Jesus to convince his older brother to do something abnormal, right? So it's not like, he's not like saying this isn't fair. It's like, no, this is the way that the law is set up. This is the way your dad also said that he wanted it to be done. And so Jesus is kind of asked about this. And so this is Jesus' reply. He says, man, I love that. Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you? And then he said to them, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. And so that's why it's important to know the context of the inheritance distribution, because we know that this man is asking for something that he has no legal right to. That Jesus sees right through this guy, that Jesus, like, you have your life too connected to this inheritance. We got my dad a T-shirt for Father's Day. I don't know, we were probably in middle school, and it said, "He who dies with the most tools wins." Right? Have you seen that? Right? That was the shirt we got. I mean, it's like, because he has, like, he built. It's funny, we're talking about a guy building extra barns, and it's like, that's my dad. Like, the tools. You just need a place to put the tools. So, we get caught up in the possessions and what we have, and so it's a joke. But we all know that guy. We all know the collector or that's. We know that person. And so, but it all ends up, reality, it all ends up in a dumpster or a yard sale. Everything we have, everything that we have, no matter how old you are, eventually that's where it ends up. And so it's understanding that, I think is going to help us deal with this thing. So listen to what Solomon says. This is King Solomon, wisest man ever. He said in Ecclesiastes 5, verse 10, he says, "The lover of money will not be satisfied with money, nor the lover of wealth with gain. This also is vanity." And that was interesting. It's like the lover of money will not be satisfied with money. And I was like, well, why? Right? I think the reality is that with money, there's always more to gain. And then also at any moment, it can be gone. Right? So if you're in love with it, I mean, it's like being in love with, I won't go there. It's this chaotic spectrum of emotion, right? Trying to love money when it's like, I mean, it'd be like watch the stock market. That would be your emotions, right? If you're loving money, it's just going up and down with the stock market. And so loving something that is so volatile, it doesn't bring peace. And then we kind of have this idea of, like, if I can get to a number, if I can get this much, then I'll be happy, right? If I can get this much, then I can quit, or I can retire, or if I can just get to this number. And then the reality is that number changes too, right? It's like, I mean, Dave Ramsey, I don't know if you guys, I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan, financial guy, getting people out of debt. He's been getting people out of debt for a couple decades now. And the whole thing is he's trying to create everyday millionaires, all right? And so they're just people that slowly invest and save and pay off debt. And because they're like, well, if you retire with $1 million, you should be fine. It's like 20 years ago, you were doing really well, right, with $1 million. But like in the next 30 years, like that number changes, right? What was a lot is not as much. I mean, that sounds like a crazy number. To even say that might not be enough in my head is mind-blowing, right? But we don't know what's going on, right? We watch inflation and, I mean, all this stuff happening. And so like, loving money is like buying into that emotional distress. And so back to the passage. It says in verse 16, and by the way, Solomon, the wealthiest man on the planet at the time, right? When he said that, when he said the lover of money will not find happiness in money. He knows, right? He's like, I have everything that could be offered. I have access to everything. And he's saying, it's not what it's about. It's verse 16. It says, and he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. And so remember, this is already a rich man. Right, so it's not a story of someone struggling who came into an abundance of wealth. This is a guy who is already, excuse me, as Jesus calls him, a rich man. All right? So he's a rich man, and then he's coming into more wealth. And what is rich? Like financially. What does that look like? Because if you asked us all to write down a number that would make us feel rich, we all have a different number, right? We would all write down a different number, and it would always be more than the number that we actually have, right? because it is so hard for us to consider ourselves as rich, but there's people looking at you going, man, they got it good over there. You know, like so rich is a relative term for sure. And so if you make $35,000 a year, you're in the top 1% of the world earners. The top 1% of the world earners. And if you make, and the average, I think it's the average salary in the United States is $50,000. So that means more than half of the United States is in the 1% earners of the world. All right, so you're doing pretty well, right? But why doesn't that change the way you feel? You know, like you could hear that, like you could know. It's like I can know that, but it doesn't affect me. It doesn't make my bills less. It doesn't make my check more. Just knowing that I have more or have to pay more than somebody else. It's because we're always comparing ourselves with other people. We're always comparing with what somebody else has and what we could get. And as Dave Ramsey says, buying things to impress people that don't even like us. You know, so it's that kind of deal. We're just trying to keep up with the Johnsons. And so in verse 18 it says this. Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." The American dream, right? Anyone fill out that lotto ticket? Man, that one had me, it's like it's like $1 billion. I don't even know what it is right now. But it's like that's what isn't that the kind of what everyone's looking for? It's I want to call it quits. I want to sit at the beach and sip margaritas and and do that. It's like, how long can you actually do that? Now listen, if you're going to test it out, I'm willing to be the test coat. You know what I mean? But like at some point you can't just shut down, because you will actually shut down. Your body will shut down, your mind will shut down. Like we are not created to just take it easy. It's needed at times, right? We have to do that at times, but we're not created for life like that. And that's what Jesus was getting at in verse 15 when he said, right? He said, life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. It's like you can't just, this idea of just accumulating and accumulating and accumulating is just, it's death. And there's nothing in the end except more desire to accumulate. And so verse 20, it says this, "But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves but is not rich toward God." So like, what is it that he did wrong? I'm going to say this as from a biblical point of view. I want you to hear this from a biblical point of view, not from a political one, okay? It is not the government's job, biblically. If you read the Bible, it's not the government's job to take care of people, right? We are to take care of each other. And so the idea here is He didn't, listen, this guy didn't, he didn't invent some new farming tech. He didn't get a loan for new tractors, and then he was making more money because he was able to use a tractor. Like, it wasn't anything that he did. This guy is plowing the same field, planting the same field every year, doing the same thing year after year, and it just so happens that this year was in abundance. It had nothing to do with him, right? It was a blessing. It was from the ground. The ground yielded in abundance for him. And so he's going, look at what I did. Now I can take it easy. Instead of looking what God gave me, now who do I need to bless with this? Like, how do I need to help someone? How can I be something for somebody because I have more than enough? I think that's what he did wrong. It was that first mindset. It was that initial, that his first thought was, I'm going to need bigger barns. Instead of, I got plenty. And listen, this is not a message about not saving. Okay, I don't hear that. I think we should have some savings for emergencies, and listen, you can't work forever, and we live longer than people used to, right? So you need retirement, you need all that stuff. So don't hear that. This is a message about understanding when we have enough and beginning to pour our abundance into others and into our communities, into our church, and into those places so that everyone can be blessed. So it's a hard issue for him. This is what David says, something similar in Psalm 39. It says, show me, Lord, my life's end and the number of my days. Let me know how fleeting my life is. You have made my days a mere handbreadth. The span of my years is as nothing before you. Everyone is but a breath, even those who seem secure. Surely everyone goes around like a mere phantom. In vain they rush about, heaping up wealth without knowing whose it will finally be. But now, Lord, what do I look for? My hope is in you. Save me from all my transgressions. Do not make me the scorn of fools. And so David's like, listen, life is too short to just make it all about a pursuit of more stuff. Then to get to the end, and you accumulate all this stuff, and then you get to the end, and he goes, we don't even know who's going to get it. It's like, well, you think your kids are, but then, like, if you have a bunch of kids, someone could end up divorced, and then they get remarried. You could have stuff that gets passed down to a bunch of people you don't know. Like trying to keep track of and accumulate stuff, thinking that it's just all going to go to a specific type of people. It's like you have no idea. You have no clue what's going to happen to it. But that can't be the focus. And here's the thing. I think people remember more how you treated them and blessed them and affected their lives than they'll ever remember how much stuff you have. I think you get to the end, they're not going to talk about all the tools in the barn. They're not going to talk about all the toys that he has. It's going to be, man, he loved hard. He loved people. And did whatever he could for people. Like, those are the stories people tell about you, if that's the life you lead, right? And I think that's the kind of life we want to lead, one that impacts people and impacts society in our communities. So let's go back to Luke 12, verse 22. It says, then Jesus said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, or what you will wear, for life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable are you than birds? Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? So I think this is a rule for, not necessarily a rule, it's kind of a general rule, but it's not a, what's the term I'm looking for? Not a factual reality, because we know that people die of starvation all over the world, right? So that's not the point of this. The idea behind this passage is about the worry. It's like worrying is actually not going to change it. Right? So you can, and so what the raven, and so it's a juxtaposition between the raven and the rich man is what he's doing. He's going, look, the rich man, he's just spending everything he can. He's just worried about getting more and building bigger barns, and he dies. And the raven is flying free, and he dies. And so the idea is that we are created. The raven is doing what the raven was created to do. Just soaring, just living, doing what ravens do. I don't know. I don't study ravens. I don't know what ravens actually do, okay? But I know for us, if we would do the things that we're created for, because we're not created for isolation. We're not created for accumulation, right? We're created for community. We're created to work, for sure. We're created for work. Like when we have purpose and we're doing something, like if you don't have purpose in work, like that's awful, right? Or when you don't have anything to work for or anything to do, like it does not last long until you're like, I've got to find something to do, right? We're created for work. And so Jesus goes on in verse 27, he says, consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it. For the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. Verse 31, but seek his kingdom, and all things will be given to you as well. And so it becomes about aim. The life is chaotic. There's thousands of variables each day. You have no idea what tomorrow holds, a bonus check or a broken water heater, right? Jesus' instructions are for you regardless to seek him first. What does seek him first mean? Right? Because you can have, because listen, and people may disagree with this, and that's fine. I think seeking the kingdom of God is an individual responsibility that no one can tell you what that means for you. Now, we can have conversations, like we could be like, hey, you should, maybe it's read the Bible. It's like, you should read the Bible. You should definitely read the Bible. Talk about giving, talk about praying. Like, you should, like, seeking the kingdom is definitely about praying. But, like, what the physically means for you, like what you're actually supposed to do with that, is different for each one of us. It's like, because listen, we're all in different positions. Like someone may be seeking first the kingdom and going, excuse me, I got to sell some stocks and build a well overseas, and then someone else would be like, I'm just going to cook dinner for the neighbors every week, like seeking for it's this idea of like it's trying to get us away from the rich the farmer going, the first thought is, I need to build bigger barns, to the first thought being, who can I bless? Right? Who can I make better? Because seeking the kingdom of God is trying to obtain the greatest good. That's what that's like. And so what is the greatest good that you can do when something comes into your life that's a blessing? Like, how can you make the kingdom better? How can you make your community better? How can you make, your church better? Right? Those are the things of seeking first the kingdom of God. And it looks different for each one of us. In verse 32, he says this: do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Whew, all right. We may not all have barns, full of food and full of grain and resources. And I am not even thinking, we're talking about selling things that we use. But what I know is that we all probably have some things lying around that we don't use. I think it's kind of the nature of us, especially America, right? It's like, if I got too much stuff, we got storage units that look nicer than people's homes, right? That's the truth. And so it's like we just put some stuff, let's put it away, and we'll forget about it, and then someone else has to deal with it. And so here's just a little challenge. We have 5 weeks of this series, and then we're going to have week 5, we're going to have a large kind of unified giving moment, all right, between the 2 services. And so find some stuff that you don't use. Find some stuff that's laying around and just list it online and just get rid of it. And then bring that in, you know, like that's an easy way. Like if you're like, man, I don't have the room in my budget. I don't have, any of the, it's a tough time of year. Christmas is coming. Like Christmas is always coming. This is an easy way to kind of participate in that, is just to find some things and just get rid of them. It's just sell your possessions and give to the poor. Like that's literally what we're talking about. So just a little, it says this in the same verse. It says, provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. This passage, we actually talked about this at Bible study a couple weeks ago. It's one of those passages that I kind of always wrestle with, this idea of treasures in heaven. Because in my mind, I'm going, so like, am I going to get there and like, why's he got more than I got? I was like, that doesn't sound like heaven. You know what I mean? Like heaven's supposed to be, So I'm like thinking, like, what is a treasure in heaven? And like, am I like doing like actual, like if I give $1, am I getting 50 cents? Am I getting $1.50? You know what I mean? Like, what is my treasure in heaven? And so I was like, man, some of this is ridiculous. But I thought, what could it be? And this is just my idea. It's not, you're not going to find this, I just wonder if we get to heaven, we get to see all of the good that was done through our sacrifice. I just think I can't think of a better way for that to make sense. Like, you just get up there and you get to see and you get to meet people that are there or because of you, or you get to hear a story about how they were hard out and something you had no idea who these people were, but because of you that they were blessed. Like, to me, that's a treasure. I love hearing that stuff, And so verse 34, it says this, and the band can come up. It says, verse 34, it says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I love this passage. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Because if you're wondering where your heart is, all you have to do is look at your budget, right? All you have to do is look at the things you spend your excess money on, or the things that don't just pay the bills, or sometimes it is the bills, some of the bills that we choose to have, right? All the 17 streaming services, you know what I mean? Like that we only watch one of, So it's like all these different, like, where's your heart? And like, I can tell you, like, you could look at a budget, and I can look at ours, and I go, okay, does that line up with? Does my budget heart line up with what I think my heart is? Right? That's a good question. That's a good question to ask. Like, here's the person I believe I am. What does my checking account say about me, though? Because I'll tell you what, I know our heart is in good food. We are food people, all right. And so so if you hang out with us, you know that. And then I know that my heart is in Kentucky with my family. And so if you see our budget, like it's affected in that direction. I love my church, and if you look at our budget, you'll see the church is in there, right? So it's where my heart is. Like, so it's like you can say all you want, but also look at the reality of where your heart is by looking at your budget. And so I'll just close with this passage in 1 Timothy. It says, those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and perceive themselves with many griefs. And so the message is just watch your heart. Just be careful not to get sucked into the American dream of just trying to accumulate enough that you can stop someday until you see someone else that accumulated more and you're like, I didn't do enough. I didn't do good enough. It's like invest in relationships, invest in your neighbor, invest in your friends and your family. And that's where we should be putting that effort. And so God bless. You want to stand and we're going to sing the Old Rugged Cross. We'll do the first and last verse and we'll rock. We'll head out. All right?